It was supposed to be just another Tuesday in Washington. Another polished press briefing. Another round of questions deflected with charm or spin. But then one sentence changed everything. Standing behind the White House podium, Caroline Leavitt, the 27-year-old press secretary, known for her brash tone and viral soundbites, cracked a smirk. And then she said it. It's interesting how some countries that can barely keep the lights on want to have a say in international politics. A few chuckles echoed across the press corps. She wasn't done. Take Burkina Faso, a country most Americans can't even find on a map. What have they contributed to the world besides instability and poverty? It was like tossing gasoline on dry brush. CNN's Sarah Mitchell raised her hand immediately. Madam Secretary, aren't those comments a little offensive? Caroline laughed. Insults, please. It's just reality. While they're over there struggling to find clean water, we're leading the world economy. I find it almost hilarious when they try to lecture us from across the ocean. The room went quiet not because people agreed, but because even they knew the damage had been done. But what Caroline didn't realize was that the whole world was listening. Thousands of miles away, across the Atlantic Ocean, in the heart of West Africa, President Ibrahim Traoré was meeting with regional leaders. The mood was focused, diplomatic. That changed the moment his aide Musa rushed into the room. Mr. President, Musa said breathlessly, holding a tablet, you need to see this. They watched the clip in silence. Caroline's face, a grin. Her words. Ibrahim's jaw clenched. He didn't blink. He had faced warlords, political coups, foreign pressure. But this was different. This was personal. It wasn't just about him. It was an insult to a billion people wrapped in arrogance and ignorance. His foreign minister, Dr. Widogo, was furious. This woman just insulted 54 countries in a single breath. Ibrahim didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. He simply said, then we will respond calmly, clearly, and with the truth. By nightfall, social media in Africa was on fire. Students protested in Lagos. Open letters poured out from Senegalese universities. African intellectuals lit up Twitter, calling it a moment of reckoning. Across the continent, leaders called Ouagadougou directly. In Ghana, President Akufo-Addo said bluntly, this is unacceptable, but the world is watching. We need a dignified answer. And one man was ready to give it. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with something far more powerful, education. Because this wasn't just a moment of insult, it was the start of something bigger. A storm was coming, and it wouldn't roar. It would rise quietly, with facts, with dignity, and with the calm, calculated voice of a man who understood the weight of silence before the truth is spoken. In Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, the sun had barely begun to set, casting gold across the rooftops. Inside the presidential chamber, the tension was electric. President Ibrahim Traoré stood in silence, arms crossed, staring at the paused video of Caroline Leavitt's briefing, her smirk frozen on screen, her voice still echoing in the room like an insult that wouldn't fade. Dr. Alance Widogo, his foreign minister, paced behind him, barely containing his rage. She mocked our people, our progress, our history. a press secretary. And this is what she thinks of one. 4 billion lives. Ibrahim didn't respond right away. He was thinking, calculating. Every second of silence more deafening than a speech. Suddenly, the door burst open again. Musa Kabori, the president's aide, rushed in with another tablet. Sir, you need to see this Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. It's everywhere. Africa is on fire. He wasn't exaggerating. In Lagos, students from the University of Lagos were marching through campus with handmade signs. We will not be mocked, they chanted. In Dakar, Senegal, intellectuals released a joint statement condemning Leavitt's comments as a dangerous regression in global diplomacy. In Nairobi, Cape Town, Accra, protests, panels, viral debates exploded across screens. Even governments took notice. The Senegalese Ministry of Foreign Affairs summoned the U.S. ambassador for urgent clarification. In Accra, Ghana's president, Nana Akufo-Addo, called Ibrahim directly. This cannot go unanswered. But the response must be surgical. A second call came in moments later from Pretoria. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa didn't waste words. Brother Ibrahim, all of Africa is watching. Do what you must. Do it with dignity. Ibrahim nodded, the weight of expectation settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about his country now. It was about the continent. It was about respect. He turned to his cabinet. We will not scream. We will not curse. We will teach. His voice was calm, but it struck like thunder. Colonel Kulibi, the defense minister, spoke next. Sir, the world sees Burkina Faso as small. But strategically, we are key. Our borders, our mineral exports, our counter-terror work, it matters. Dr. Fatima Sawogo, Minister of Economy, added, last year, we had 8% GDP growth. We lead in gold, cotton, and energy development. These are not talking points. These are facts. Ibrahim stepped back. The beginnings of an idea forming. Then let's show her the facts. Not just her. The world. Outside the palace. Lights flickered on across Ouagadougou. As the city buzzed with anticipation. Rumors spread like wildfire. The president was preparing a response. And not just a speech. Ali's son. But across the ocean, in Washington, D.C., Caroline Leavitt was still brushing it off. She had no idea what was coming. No idea that a wave was building not with fists, but with focus, and when it came crashing down, it wouldn't sound like anger. It would sound like truth. Back in Washington, the storm was closing in, and Caroline Leavitt was the eye of it. Inside the West Wing, aides scrambled like firefighters in a burning building. Phones buzzed, screens lit up with headlines from Al Jazeera, BBC, and France 24. The words were impossible to ignore. White House officials sparks, African outrage. Continent unites in fury over mockery. Caroline Leavitt becomes global symbol of arrogance. President Trump paced inside the Oval Office. Jaw clenched. He hated distractions. And this wasn't just a distraction, it was a diplomatic crisis. Get her in here, he snapped. Moments later, Caroline walked in. still wearing the same cocky confidence she had at the podium. But this time, it didn't land. "What the hell were you thinking?" Trump barked, slamming a folder onto his desk. "You just insulted half the world." Caroline didn't flinch. "I was telling the truth. These countries come on. They lecture us about politics when they don't even have stable infrastructure." Trump leaned forward. "We already have trade issues, foreign tension, global distrust. And now this. Do you know how many calls I've gotten? In the last 2 hours. Secretary of State Antony Blinken stepped into the room next, his expression grim. "Sir, Kenya has cancelled a joint summit. Ghana and Nigeria are threatening to freeze military and trade cooperation. South Africa is drafting a public condemnation." Caroline rolled her eyes. "For real over a joke?" Blinken didn't blink. "This isn't just about a joke. It's about how you made the entire administration look." Across town, journalists gathered like sharks, sensing blood in the water. Questions flew at press briefings. Foreign correspondents grilled White House aides. CNN's Sarah Mitchell tweeted, "I've never seen diplomatic damage happen this fast over a single sentence." Inside the West Wing, the communications team was in meltdown mode. Jennifer Hayes, Caroline's senior aide, pulled her aside. "Caroline, listen to me. You need to walk this back. Issue an apology." "Something." Caroline's reply was razor sharp. "Apologize. For what facts?" Jennifer whispered urgently. "Harvard professors are already writing essays on this. TikTok's flooding with African creators responding to you. And now, Ibrahim Traoré is preparing a global address. He's going to bury you with data." But Caroline didn't believe it. Not yet. She underestimated what was coming. She thought she was sparring with politicians. She didn't know she had awakened a continent. She didn't realize that the most powerful comebacks don't come from rage. They come from quiet minds with sharp memory. Back in Burkina Faso, the response was nearly ready. Ibrahim Traoré wasn't planning a rebuttal. He was planning a masterclass, and in less than 72 hours, the world would be watching, not to hear an angry speech, but to witness something far rarer in modern politics, a lesson delivered with grace, clarity, and devastating calm. The sun hadn't even risen in Ouagadougou. Yet the presidential palace was already alive. Security guards moved with urgency. Staff whispered in hushed voices. And behind a closed mahogany door, President Ibrahim Traoré sat with his entire cabinet. The moment had arrived. No shouting. No outrage. Just focus. "Today, we respond," Ibrahim said, voice low but firm. Not with anger, with precision. A hush fell over the room. Colonel Koulibi, the defense minister, laid out a regional map. Burkina Faso sits on a critical fault line between stability and chaos. The world doesn't see it, but they will. Dr. Fatima Sawogo, Minister of Economy, followed. Our economic data is airtight. 2% GDP growth. Foreign investment, up 60% this year, alone. If they want facts, let's give them facts. Ibrahim nodded slowly. No retweets. No insults. We're not here to trend, we're here to teach. Across the hall, technicians set up a custom-built media room. Lighting, satellite uplinks, flags. Every detail had to be exact. Ibrahim didn't want just a press statement, He wanted a global lesson. Meanwhile, global media outlets were already circling. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, everyone wanted access. Ouagadougou had become the epicenter of world attention. All because one man chose not to scream, but to speak. At lunch, Ibrahim took a quiet moment with his wife, Akhara. Under the palace terrace, the city buzzed below. Cameras lined the outer gates. "You're going to destroy her," she said softly, stirring her tea. He shook his head. "I'm not destroying anyone," he said. "I'm educating a mindset." She smiled. "You always were the patient one." Inside, his aide, Musa, rehearsed the slides: electricity expansion, poverty reduction, clean water access, regional security stats. The presentation read like a national report card, except this time, the world would be grading. That evening, Ibrahim called his final briefing. His cabinet sat around him, eyes alert. "This isn't about Caroline Leavitt," he said. "It's not about revenge or humiliation. This is about how we carry ourselves when we've been insulted. Our response is not just for the White House. It's for every young African who has ever been told they were less than." And just like that, the room shifted. This wasn't a press conference anymore. It was a moment in history. By 10:00 p.m., international broadcasters confirmed coverage. The speech would air live simultaneously in English, French, Arabic, and Portuguese. Ibrahim returned to his study one last time. He looked over the script. Not a single word changed. Then, he closed the folder and whispered to himself, "Let's show them who we are." June 7th, 2025. The world stopped to listen. By 10:00 a.m., local time in Ouagadougou, the courtyard of the presidential palace had transformed into a global media arena. CNN vans, BBC satellite trucks, reporters elbow to elbow. Every camera pointed at a single podium, framed by two flags, Burkina Faso and the African Union. Across the ocean, in Washington, D.C., Caroline Leavitt sat in a small office, watching the live feed from her laptop. For the first time in her career, she didn't smile. At exactly 2:00 p.m. Washington time, President Ibrahim Traoré stepped up to the microphone. No entourage, no applause, just him. And silence. He wore a navy suit, crisp white shirt, no teleprompter. His voice calm, his tone composed. "Ladies and gentlemen of the international press," he began, "thank you for joining us today. I am here to respond to remarks made by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, remarks that mocked Africa and my country." He paused. In her words, our nations were dismissed as unstable, poor, and irrelevant. She questioned what we have contributed to the world. Today, I will answer with facts. Behind him, a massive screen lit up. Since 2022, Burkina Faso has increased national electricity coverage by 340%. Today, 89% of our population has access to electricity, one of the highest rates in West Africa. Click. A second slide. We are Africa's second largest gold producer. Our output contributes 15% to the continent's total. Our GDP has grown at 8.2% annually, 3 times the global average. Reporters began murmuring. In the White House, aides exchanged nervous glances. Caroline sat frozen. Ibrahim continued, his voice unwavering. She asked, "What have we contributed besides poverty and instability?" Let me respond. Click. We produce 65% of the world's high-grade cotton. 94% of our citizens now have access to clean water. Terror attacks have declined by 71% in 2 years. And in the past 3 years, extreme poverty has fallen from 47 to 23%. He looked up, then delivered the line that would echo across continents. Respect is not demanded. It is earned through knowledge, not arrogance. The screen changed again. Burkina Faso has maintained a fiscal surplus for 2 consecutive years. Meanwhile, the United States carries over $33 trillion in national debt. Gasps in the press corps. Caroline's face turned pale. But Ibrahim didn't gloat. He didn't shout. He simply continued. Our youngest generation, 67%, under the age of 25, are engineers, scientists, doctors, educated in our universities. They don't need lectures. They need partnership. Miss Leavitt could learn a great deal from them. Backstage, African ambassadors stood and applauded. Some wiped away quiet tears. In the Oval Office, Trump leaned back, muttering, "He's destroying her with manners." As Ibrahim stepped down from the podium, silence reigned. But in that silence, the world heard everything. The moment Ibrahim Traoré stepped off that stage, the world erupted. Clips of his speech exploded across social media, sliced, subtitled, translated into over 20 languages within hours. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, every platform flooded with reactions. But the most viral clip was just one sentence. Respect is not demanded. It is earned through knowledge, not arrogance. Back in Washington, Caroline Leavitt stared at her screen in stunned silence. Her face wide-eyed, expression blank, was already being turned into reaction memes, one by one. Headlines began to stack up. A masterclass in diplomacy. BBC Caroline educated trends worldwide. Reuters from arrogance to humility. A global turning point. The Atlantic inside the White House. Panic set in. President Trump slammed the door behind him as he entered the Situation Room. "We told her not to go off script," he growled. Advisors looked to Secretary of State Antony Blinken for options. He shook his head. Damage control is no longer an option. This has turned into a global incident. African nations wasted no time. 8 governments canceled high-level meetings with U.S. envoys. The African Union voted to review all trade negotiations involving the United States. In Abuja, our students gathered in peaceful protest, holding signs that read, "Dignity can't be mocked. We are not a punchline." And outside the White House gates, hundreds of African students, diplomats, and allies marched silently, carrying one powerful quote on posters. She laughed. He educated. Even late-night shows couldn't resist. Stephen Colbert opened his monologue with, "Our press secretary mistook a global briefing for an open mic roast and got professionally humbled in 4 languages." At CNN, political analyst Jake Morrison sat across from a panel of diplomats. "I've never seen a figure walk the line between grace and power like Ibrahim just did," he said. He didn't humiliate her. She did that to herself. All he did was hold up a mirror. Caroline's aides scrambled. Public relations teams begged for a statement. Something, anything. Jennifer Hayes, her chief advisor, finally cornered her. You have to say something now, or you'll never come back from this. Caroline shook her head. Dazed. He made me look like a fool, and he never even raised his voice. But by then, it was too late. A growing list of African scholars, U.S. academics, and even former ambassadors had begun calling for her resignation. Editorials from the Washington Post to Le Monde framed it not as a scandal, but as a turning point in 21st century diplomacy. 3 days later, under mounting pressure, Caroline Leavitt stood in front of the press once again. Her voice, once confident and defiant, now barely broke above a whisper. I recognize that my words were inappropriate and damaging to U.S.'s Africa relations. I have submitted my resignation effective immediately. And just like that, the smirk was gone. But the memory of it, the consequences of it would ripple far beyond Washington. Because what had started as a careless insult had now reshaped the global conversation. The resignation was just the beginning. Across Africa, a wave of celebration swept through the streets. Not wild or chaotic, but dignified. Proud. In Accra, school children read excerpts of Ibrahim Traoré's speech in class. In Nairobi, artists painted murals of his closing words. And in Johannesburg, university students held a candlelight vigil, not to mourn Caroline's fall, but to honor the rise of something deeper, respect. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim declined all interviews. No media parade. No triumphant press tour. Instead, he issued a single, humble statement. I regret that Miss Leavitt lost her position, but I hope this reminds all of us, leaders and citizens alike, that words carry weight. Mutual respect must guide global dialogue. And that tone, that measured calm, only amplified his impact. Within 2 weeks, investment inquiries poured into Burkina Faso. European companies, previously hesitant, now sent delegations. The Central Bank of France re-evaluated the West African monetary policy structure. China offered strategic partnerships. Even Canada proposed a clean energy exchange. In just 1 month, over $8 billion in new foreign investment entered the country. But the spotlight didn't end there. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, all three sent formal invitations for President Traoré to deliver lectures on diplomacy, development, and leadership. At Harvard, students packed into Sanders Theater hours before he arrived. The air was electric. No celebrity. No red carpet. Just a man with a folder and a voice. I am not here, he began, because I defeated anyone. I am here because my people taught me that dignity is more powerful than volume. Applause broke out. Professors nodded. Graduate students scribbled furiously. It continued. Modern diplomacy isn't about flexing influence. It's about wielding humility. It's about preparing twice, speaking half as much, and listening always. The crowd stood before he even finished. In Washington, former critics began to shift tone. Even seasoned anchors like Anderson Cooper admitted, we underestimated him, and now he's rewriting the playbook. Meanwhile, Caroline Leavitt retreated from public life. She tried to reclaim her image writing op-eds, posting lessons, learned essays, but the damage had settled too deep. At Georgetown, her fall became a case study. At Columbia, a course on global communications opened its semester with the Leavitt-Traoré incident, how preparation defeats presumption. Even more striking, young Africans around the world began to see Ibrahim not just as a leader, but as a mirror. In Lagos, a teenager posted on TikTok, "He made me proud to be African," without ever raising his voice. In Ouagadougou, Ibrahim declined a parade in his honor. Instead, he spent his 37th birthday walking quietly through the garden with his daughter. She looked up and asked, "Daddy, are you famous all over the world?" He smiled, placing a hand gently on her head. "No, sweetheart. I just reminded the world who we are." It began with a smirk, a single careless sentence, a flash of arrogance on a Washington stage. And yet, what followed was something no one expected. Not outrage, not retaliation, but awakening. In the months that followed Caroline Leavitt's resignation, the ripple effects of President Ibrahim Traoré's response stretched far beyond politics. It became a cultural moment, a turning point, a quiet revolution in how the world viewed Africa and how Africa viewed itself. Newsrooms around the globe re-evaluated their coverage of the continent. No longer the passive backdrop to global affairs. Africa was now seen as a rising voice, a place of strategy, of youth, of undeniable momentum. At the United Nations, smaller nations began quoting Ibrahim in speeches. Words like preparation, dignity, and measured truth echoed in assembly halls. In Paris, a primetime panel on France, 24 debated whether Europe had underestimated Africa for too long. One analyst said plainly, "This was more than a rebuttal, it was a reckoning." Meanwhile, in high schools across the U.S., social studies teachers showed clips of Ibrahim's speech not as a political statement, but as an example of statesmanship. In Philadelphia, a ninth-grade teacher paused the video and asked her students, "What's more powerful, yelling to be heard, or saying something worth listening to?" The class sat in silence. In Burkina Faso, the results were visible. Roads improved. New solar grids lit up rural towns. The economy, already growing, now accelerated with global partnerships. Ibrahim refused to take credit. He simply kept working. At night, he would return to his study, reviewing reports by lamplight. Never far from his roots. One evening, he received a letter from a young girl in Malawi. It read, "Thank you for showing the world that we are not poor. We are powerful. I want to be president one day. Like you, not to clap back, but to lift others up." Ibrahim kept that letter on his desk. By December 2025, Time magazine named him Person of the Year. The cover, a silhouette of him at the podium, with the caption, "The young man who educated the world." In the interview, Ibrahim was asked if he ever felt proud of what he did to Caroline Leavitt. He paused, then answered, "I'm not proud that someone lost their job, but I'm proud that we stood for something, that we didn't meet ignorance with rage but with reason. And that, more than anything, became the legacy, not just a viral speech, not just a diplomatic correction, but a global reminder that dignity, when armed with truth, is unstoppable." On New Year's Eve, as fireworks lit up Ouagadougou, a quiet moment unfolded in the palace garden. Ibrahim stood beside his daughter once again. She whispered, "Did we change the world, Daddy?" He looked to the sky and replied, No, my love. But maybe we reminded it to listen.